Okay, so let's try to wrap up this baby blue wood dye color. I did want to end up mentioning right from the top that there is a slight defect that wraps all the way around this piece. That's where the two top coat sealers ended up meeting. And typically these two are pretty compatible with each other. So today I'm going to be doing a light blue, probably like a sky blue, I believe the name would end up being. Otherwise, maybe a baby blue type of color. I guess it won't be exactly a baby blue, but it'll be kind of light. I just got a lot of requests about a specific color, so I'm going to try to show how I ended up getting to that color. So in my measuring cup, I have 4 ounces of the lacquer thinner. You can use denatured alcohol as well. It's just what I have on hand right now is lacquer thinner. I got a pretty big tub of the lacquer thinner, 5 gallons. It was a pretty good deal. So now I'm just going to put in 12 drops of the blue using a Keda dye royal blue. Let you know what the sanding process was up front here. So for the sand, I ended up doing something a little bit different. I ended up sanding with a 220 grit instead of the standard 150, 180 grit. Now, the 150, 180 grit is kind of a general rule. If you want the deeper, darker type of coloring, then you'll want to use a sandpaper that's a little more aggressive, a little more coarse. For this particular color, I'm looking for a very light type of color, a diluted version. So I went with a 220 grit sandpaper. I typically don't do that. I didn't do that on one of the other pieces that I ended up having, but I also did a sandback on the other piece. Instead of doing a full sandback, I'm going to actually try doing a wipe down sandback, where I'm just going to take some of the lacquer thinner and just a straight lacquer thinner, and then put it onto a toweling and wipe down the wood dye surface to end up kind of giving it a surface sand. So you'll see that as we progress through here. So I'm going to let this rest a little bit. Again, this is 12 drops and 4 ounces of the lacquer thinner. I'm going to just try it out because I did use the 220 grit, and for the sake of the video, sometimes the colors don't always come through in the deepness of the wood. So I'll be back. Okay, so this first coat has dried out. I'm just gonna show you what I was talking about with this kind of like a sandback, I guess. A chemical sandback is what I call it. I'm not sure if there's somebody else has coined the term for this or what, but so it's just clean. Well, other than what's on my gloves that's coming off, it's just a clean lacquer thinner. And also, this would be kind of what it would end up looking like if I would end up sealing it right now. Not sure how well that's showing up, but it's just a very light color. And so this is kind of like a chemical sandback. As you can see, it's just removing a lot of the surface dye that's on there, which allows the deeper portions of the wood dye to remain in the grains without having to actually sand back to fresh wood. Now I'm going to do a video that has that process, but this is a process that I wanted to show as well because, hey, this is a pretty easy way to end up doing a sandback without having to actually burn up sandpaper, as well as kick a bunch of dust around and the other fun stuff that goes with doing a wash coat sandback, which isn't a bad thing. It's really not that bad, but this is a pretty easy way to do it too. So I just wanted to show that. Now you can see it was a pretty diluted solution. Now if I did this with a heavier, more concentrated mix of this dye stain, then it would probably pull off a little bit more. I'm sorry, I'm just grabbing a new paper towel in here, and then I'm just gonna kind of dab around here to help dry it off. Now I could put a dye stain coat right over the top of this, and it would probably end up doing some coloring, but because there's lacquer thinner already in the deeper portions right now, it wouldn't color quite as well. So it's not, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, especially if I'm trying to keep it on the really light side. But because I have a camera, so as you can see here, I'm actually back to some of the fresh wood already, and the dye is lingering still in the deeper pockets of the wood. Again, this really isn't the greatest piece of wood, but, well, I really apologize for that. But anyways, I think this is dried out pretty well already. I should probably let this dry out a little bit longer. But I'm doing several light coats, so it won't really hurt too bad to end up just continuing through. So again, I'm just drawing up a little bit of the dye stain. I'm just putting on another application. And this will help, excuse me, this will also help keep it lighter in color. Because what's going to darken this color, with it being so diluted, is more and more heavier buildup of the dye. So by doing that wipe down process, you're removing some of that heavier buildup of the dye. And then this way we can kind of keep it a nice light color. Ugh. Boy, you know what? I bought these two lights, I let it charge all night, and then when I go to use it, it only stays on for like an hour. 60 minutes is all the time I get out of it. Ay, ay, ay. So, anyways, I will end up just putting this down, and I will then let this dry out and charge up my light. So it's going to be a little bit before I can get back to this. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention too now. So as this is starting to dry out, another thing I personally like to do is just taking a dry cloth and wiping it down, or dabbing it, you know, just kind of dab it. It helps it dry a little faster as well. Just give a little wipe down. Just helps keep everything smooth. And I do this while it's still a little bit damp, so that way it smooths out over the surface. So I guess it's kind of like a burnishing process just before my next dye stain application. Okay, so I am going to let that dry out and charge up my light. Sorry about that. Got my lights charged up. Sorry about that. Anyways, so this is where I'm at. Now I could seal this up and it would probably be a pretty nice piece already. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to end up doing one more of these chemical sandbags, I guess you'd call them. And so this would probably be something pretty close to what it would look like with sealer on it. Hope that's showing up pretty well. And that's what that would look like with, you know, with sealer. It would be pretty close. You know, certain sealers have certain effects. You know, something that's an oil base could end up having a slate yellow tint to it, like something that's lacquer that would end up probably being a little more clear. So you just want to test it with the sealer if it's, you know, a real specific color that you're trying to get to. But I'm just wiping this down. As you can see, a lot of the surface dye is coming off. And, you know, it depends upon how much you want to remove. I'm trying to make it have a little more contrast, so I'm doing a little bit more just for the video purpose, because a lot of times I can't really capture the depth very well on the camera. I'm trying to make this a little shorter video. So anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this dry then. I'm going to let it fully dry. Actually, I'm not. I'm just going to keep going here. So now I'm just going to wipe this down a little bit. We'll reevaluate it again, and then we'll end up sealing it up. And you don't necessarily have to do all the sandbags. I mean, you could probably just end up doing a couple of coats in the same process, and you probably get pretty similar results. But I just wanted to have a little more contrast for the video, so that way, hopefully, it shows up a little better. But, you know, from the other video with the layering of the wood dyes, I received quite a few messages and stuff about ways that it can be done. So, how I got to it. Alright, so I have that on there. I'm just going to give this a wipe down again here, just to, you know, deepen the color up just a little bit. I don't want to go too much, because like I said, if I go too much, then I could end up changing it over into the blue, or I want to keep this a light blue color. You know, towards the baby blue type of realm. So I'm going to give this a good wipe down, and I will let this dry out, and I'll be back in a little bit. So that's that. All right, I will be back. I'll let this fully dry out, and then I'll be back in a little bit. So now, if you wanted this to be more of like an aqua color or something like that, then you could end up adding a touch of the diluted yellow, even if you wanted to layer it, or even, sorry, even layer. Even add a drop or two to the, to this diluted blue dye stain itself. A little too heavy on that area, so I'm going to stop before I totally wreck this, and I have to sand more than I wanted to. But okay, so I'm going to let this dry, and then I will finish this up off camera. But as you can see, hopefully that's showing up pretty well. It's a very nice light blue color, and it has very good depth to it. But I will finish the rest of this off, and I'll come back and I'll show you the final results. Okay, so let's try to wrap up this baby blue wood dye color. I did want to end up mentioning right from the top that there is a slight defect that wraps all the way around this piece. That's where the two top coat sealers ended up meeting. Now, typically these two are pretty compatible with each other. Once they're dry, if they're wet, it looks like there's a chemical reaction that occurs, and they don't play too well together. So I just wanted to point that out, and I hope that you can overlook that and just kind of look at the color representation of what I was trying to do. I did do a wood layering video before, and I did get asked a lot of questions about this particular piece, so I just wanted to make a video tutorial and demonstration of how I ended up getting there. But anyways, basically this is the side that ends up having the lacquer, which is a clear color that has a little true representation for the color underneath. This side has the spar urethane, and it has a slight yellowing to it, but that's probably the UV protecting agents that's in the spar urethane. I think it has a pretty cool property within itself on certain colors. It can have a pretty nice effect, so I just wanted to point that out and just kind of show the differences on how you can end up achieving even different tones with just different sealers as well. So I hope that this video ends up helping somebody get to a certain color that they may be looking for. And I hope that it gives a pretty good representation of how I ended up getting to a specific color. It's a pretty easy color to hit. I did use the blue dye from the Keda wood dye kit. So if you wanted to use the lacquer and get to something like this, you can just take the yellow and dilute that, and then maybe just layer a little bit over the top of it, or you can maybe even add a drop to the 12 drops to the 4 ounce ratio of the blue wood dye color as well. So hopefully that helps out, and if you have any other questions, just feel free to leave a comment or email me, and I'll try to help out as best I can. I'm going to try to get away from some of the blues. I've been doing a lot of blues, but that's a lot of the questions that I've been getting, so I'm going to try to move on to some other colors, and I really apologize if you have some other questions. I'll try to answer it in email format or something like that, or in the comments, but I'm going to try to move on to some other colors. Thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it.